Lagos was just a slave port. There was nothing. That was how it started off. The real, and even before that, you know, the real civilization in this area then, the area of Lagos, was the Benin Kingdom. The Benin Kingdom. Yeah. So when the Portuguese came in 1400, they did not come to Lagos. They came to Benin Kingdom because that was established thing. So that's the story of this house. So, like I said,
our history is so rich. Being a content creator who have visited several infrastructural development growth going on here in Lagos, it is very important to know where the foundation of the city was built on. And I'm very surprised a single man is taking this project all by himself. Welcome to Onikan House, where a single man and his family is telling the Lagos story in a way you will love it.
Now got the building, we were like, what do we put here? So we needed to populate it with history of Lagos. So the first thing we did was to go and research the history of Lagos. And one of the places we turned to were the academic places, like the universities,
the schools
of. But we discovered that the history that we were inheriting or finding were the histories that were told by the colonial
masters. And
we didn't want that. We didn't want that to be our story. Our story has changed. We are now people that were in charge of our own futures. So we should be able to tell that story. And then colonial British will tell the story from their own perspective and glorify their own efforts.
Yeah.
It might not necessarily,
the original,
might not be how the Africans, we found it or we saw it.
Yeah.
So we thought, look, we have to begin to tell the stories from the perspective of Africans, of Nigerians and all of that. But unfortunately, Lagos at that time, by the end of slavery and all of that, Lagos has started being populated, had started getting populated by very brilliant minds. Minds that, you know, started thinking that, look, there's something about us, we should be our own people. We've got the capacity. So that nationalist desire started coming out in a lot of them. And that's why we have this. In fact, one of the reasons that I said we do this is because we want to give back to young Nigerians. And the reason is, if you look around, we have a lot of young Nigerians doing amazingly. I mean, you have started on your own field.
So.
There's some that are doing music, some fashion, some arts, some drama, excelling. But we always ask, but I'm always worried when I think, are these young Nigerians, are they equipped with their real history, with their culture? So it can be a source of their creativity, rather than just being abstract.
Just going out
of ordinary, or going to take somebody else's culture and try and make it theirs and all of that. Let them understand that they have a rich culture. Yes,
we have a history.
You have a history. It's sad, it's heartbreaking, but it's our history. And the story to tell is that, yes, we went through slavery, we went through colonialism, but at the same time, we have people that are surgeon generals in all these countries. We have people excelling in different fields. That's the story to tell, that we have come from this very negative and disadvantaged position.
I'll see how stories
tell. Excelled. So, and I thought that was important. Now, the first thing we noticed that when we told people about, do you know these people? Their first reaction is that, for the ones that have English name, that some of them will say, some will say they don't know. Some will say they thought they were white people. On the Nigerian currency, this man is there. I think this one too. So it's not as though it should be a name that is strange to you, because
I know him.
He's the foremost nationalist. And what does that mean? Simply that when Africans came to the position whereby they became self-aware of themselves, they now decided that no, there's nothing special about this British or this colonial rule. We can rule ourselves. Let us start to fight to rule ourselves. Let's start make the case with them that we want to rule ourselves. Yes, it won't be perfect, but the earlier the better that we start to rule ourselves. So self-determination, some of the earliest records that existed then was the journey of this. Now understand that in those days, Lagos was just a slave port. There was nothing, that was how it started off. The real, and even before that, you know, the real civilization in this area then, the area of Lagos, was the Benin Kingdom. The Benin Kingdom. So when the Portuguese came in 1400, they did not come to Lagos. They came to Benin Kingdom, because that was established kingship and kingdom and all of that. So when they came, now the description of this Mr. Sequoia in his journals, he said that he was on his way back from Benin Kingdom when his ship developed a problem. But where he described where that ship broke down is that first account we have of Lagos today. That's why it's the first record we have here of a foreigner describing the area called Lagos. So that's why that's our first entry. Now, the history of Lagos, the kingship of Lagos, is derived from the Benin Empire because it's the Benin Kingdom that operated this area. Now, understand that you have another civilization here, the Dahomey Kingdom as well. And then you have the Oyo too. And then you have the Oyo Kingdom above. But for Lagos at the time, Benin had a stronger influence there, and based on that, because everywhere you control, you send
your kings,
these things there to govern the place. So Benin had sent the viceroy then. The first person that Benin sent is called Ashipa. His son is Ado, and that's how the Royal House of Lagos today started off. So they are derived from the Benin Kingdom. That's our association with the Benins. But having said that, it's an influence, and that's what makes Lagos interesting. As much as the Benins were the kings of Lagos, there was a lot of influence coming down south from Oyo as well. Okay. So it was a blend of both, which is why Lagos is unique, as it were. You won't find only Benin culture here. Yeah. You'll find a mesh of Benin and over time, the Yoruba started dominating it, but at least the Benins had made their imprint by being the ones that control the royal house. This is the earliest picture we have of Lagos, which is, you see, thatched roof, the wood. There's a clearer one there.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah. So now, what's interesting, the first fact that is interesting about all of this is that in 1866, population of Lagos was 25,000.
Wow.
When you think about 22 million today, you're like, what an explosion. But one thing, Lagos then was, the geographical size of Lagos then was limited to just this Lagos Island. That's why they called Lagos. Everywhere else, when you move to Ikeja, they called it Western Region. It wasn't part of Lagos at the time. It was later when Lagos as a state was established at some point in 1976, I think it was.
Okay.
And 1967, you know, that was when Lagos was now expanded and now includes Ojo, Apapa, Ekpe, Ikorodu.
But then where whether it stayed on their own or what?
It was just a region.
A region, okay.
It was a region that was, and then understand how it worked. For the Africans would only control their villages. And make claim on their villages. Yeah. It was when the colonialists came, that's when they started galvanizing bigger areas. But went to conquer the north. Yeah. You know,
they want expansion.
They now expansion because they see a bigger picture. That's what we always say of how they can
have more. Yeah.
So that's the first information. Then. In 1861, what defines Lagos is an event they call the Annexation of Lagos. Now, that happened in 1861 when the British came and went to the King of Lagos and said to the King of Lagos that we want to take over your city as a colony of the Queen of England. But before that, 10 years before that, something had happened in Lagos. The king then, a man called Kosoko, before he became king, he had come in 1845. He was his uncle that was king in Lagos then, a man called Akitoye. So those are the key names. Akitoye was the king. His younger cousin called Kosoko came and usurped his throne, took over his throne, and drove him out of Lagos. Now he went to the British to say to them that please come and help me take this thing. I promise I won't participate in slavery. I will promote
I'll be fair.
trade and all of that.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, they took permission and all of that. So they came to fight for him on his behalf. And they eventually defeated King Kosoko in 1851 and chased King Kosoko out of Lagos. He went to resettle in Ekpe. Now, for the next 10 years, they were more or less involved in the commercial activities and administrative activities. But after 10 years, in 1861 exactly, they came back to the king's son. Now, that king had died, Akita had died, his son Dosumo. They now came back to Dosumo and presented him with a document to sign, handing over Lagos to them. I'll show you that document. So this was a turning point in the history of Lagos.
This particular year.
So what this represents is the 1851 bombardment of Lagos. That's where you see these British naval ships facing the port of Lagos and shooting in, and then the military men going into Lagos to conquer the King's Palace and taking over the King's Palace.
That was during the fight between Oba Kosoko.
Oba Kosoko, yes.
Okay.
When they drove him out, they now restored King Akitoye back then, and it is said that prior to that incident, Lagos had a population of over 20-something thousand.
Yeah.
Prior to that 1851, Lagos had a population of over 25,000. After that war, they could only count about 5,000 people in Lagos. So a lot of them.
That 20,000 people died, or
a lot of them.
The flew.
So these are pictures. This is TBS. It was known as race course before.
Race course, yeah.
It was just a race course. This is the picture before they built the current TBS.
It's just an empty floor.
Empty floor where they, just a race course for the horses.
Yeah.
So this was in 1920 something. This was in the 50s, I think. That's why this Independence building is there now, but still race course. It was not until 66 or 67 that they built this edifice now that is now called TBS. Even at the time we were getting our independence in 1960, it was still just a race course, because that was where that independence held.
Okay, this was where they had the independence.
The independence.
Are you serious?
Just
wow. Our history is so rich.
very rich. This neighborhood you are seeing, there's a place called ECOWAS building. That was the old house of the president, or the what's it called? This man. He was from there during the 1966 coup that he was captured. Wow. And taken when he was now killed. Just at that roundabout. So the place is
before the museum. Like before the museum, or when you're before, after that museum, on that road that leads to the bridge, as you are going on the left, yes,
you see a police
station,
police headquarters. It is just before the police headquarters. I will just look at it. It's called the ECOWAS building. That used to be the residence of the Prime Minister, and it was from there that he was captured and taken. So different things. Look at it. In 1952, population had risen to 25,000. So a lot happened between that 1860 to
1952.
Exactly. After the British came, they too were trying to establish themselves. So in this period, this was the period that Lord Lugard was bombing, annexing all parts of northern Nigeria. You had other players that were also playing in southern Nigeria, capturing Jaja of Opobo, the Boni people. So you can see all these things were going on in different places before they now brought everything together to come and make one Nigeria. So initially they had Lagos colony. After in 18 Lagos becomes a British colony.
Incorporated as a West Africa, as a part of
exactly.
a bridge.
In the by 19 19 By 1906, Lagos was added to the Southern Protectorate to become colony and protectorate of Southern Nigeria. And then in 1914, the Southern Nigeria and Northern Nigeria were merged together to form one Nigeria. So this was where that document was signed. That was the Supreme Court then in 1914.
Located where?
You'll be so shocked where it is. Do you know where they call Tinubu Square?
Tinubu Square. I think I've been hearing about the place.
I'm sure now that you are being exposed to history, you'll find your way there. It's still
within this area.
Yes, still within this area, Tinubu Square. They've changed the format. It still has a fountain and all of that. It looks quite different from this now, but it's still that neighborhood. You know, it's very rich in history. These are just different pictures of old Lagos. This was in 1925 or 28, I can't remember what it was, when the British Prince visited Lagos.
What made Lagos more attractive? Like today we have about 25,000 million people in Lagos. What really attracted people to
now, starting
Lagos?
from that time that it was a slave port.
Yeah.
When it stopped being a slave port, it was still a place of trade. Lagos has always been a place of trade.
Trade, yeah.
People have always come here to succeed. And when those ones succeed, they'll go back and tell them wherever they come from, whether it's in Nigeria or outside.
They go and inspire
they
people.
keep coming. Yeah. So you find anybody, till tomorrow, there's still busloads of people coming from different parts of Nigeria to come and succeed in Lagos. And it's because they feel that this is where they have the opportunity and the fairest chance to do that in that entrepreneurial spirit. So it's about that entrepreneurial spirit of Lagos, Lagosians, that keeps drawing more and more people here, that you to come. And you hear a lot of stories of, I came to Lagos with just one nylon bag. Now I own 10 houses because of I've persevered and I've focused on this and I've made my own share of it. So it's still that story. People come here to succeed.
Wow.
So you have all of that. When you hear the name Lagos, you always trace it back to the Portuguese, and it's interesting to also tell the Portuguese story as well. The Portuguese were the explorers at the time they were discovering. They call them the Portuguese discovery era. And what they did was that they were driven by two things. This is Portugal here at the southernmost tip of Europe. Now, in their era, in this period of time, the major trade that was going on was coming from this area, this Asian part. And the commodity that they were really after is the spices from India. Now, for the sake of just using this map, we would say India is somewhere here.
Okay.
Just when although it's not in this map, but if we are extending this map, India will be somewhere here. Now, this Portuguese here. Now, spices then was like, of course, it's food and all of that, but it was like what we would consider gold or oil today. It was such a product to deal with, to deal in trade with, and the people that controlled it controlled a lot of resources. So, but the Portuguese were tired of getting the spices from this route because they felt they were being exploited.
Okay.
They felt that if they could find their way across Africa, they would find their way to where the spices were coming from and they would have direct access. Now, even though we are looking at this map like this, they had no clue. It was just maybe some of their own people that explored that would come back and tell them.
I was about to ask you that question.
They had no clue, and and the reason why you would know this is that now the man that started this journey for them was a man called Prince Henry the Navigator. He was the one that just had this passion, just like you have your passion today. That you know what, I want to get to these spices, and I'll do what I have to do, and I'm going to use this maritime. That I cannot go through land, but I'll go through the sea, the ocean, to get to where these spices are. So he started building ships, understanding marine activities and all of that. He started inviting experts, boat farers and all of that to come, paying them, set up. Then he'll create a fleet. He'll build like 3 or 4 ships, send them out. Now look at this. And this is what I call, these are the things that sets us aside. Look at this now. This man started this journey himself. He sent out the early ships in about 1419, and he started making this gradual progress. Now, sometimes they will go, the ship will capsize. He will have to raise another team again, pay them. But he was convinced that if they go, the treasures that they're going to bring back
is what's more than
pay for
everything,
the voyage until they find their way. Now he did this. You can see the progression. Now, he got to this Madeira. He got to this island in 1936. He got to this one in 1934. He got this one in 40. He died when they got to Gambia in 1460. That's when he died. But the next king again that came. The next king, now he was not a king, he was a prince.
He was a prince.
But he was the one that had the passion. But by this time, everybody in Portugal had seen the opportunities that this was bringing, because all these exotic things from other countries were being brought back to King, and were brought back to Portugal, and was paying for all these exercise. They are not getting, but they are getting some other valuables. So the king now took that on, and the first king was King John. King John ruled, he too went all the way. King John II too ruled. I think it was during the era of King John II that they got to Ghana. This is Elmina in Ghana in 1482. Yeah. They got to our own Benin in 1486. And then after that they went down, to the Cape Cross. Now one of the biggest challenge for them was going over this place, because the seas were quite rough here. A lot of their explorers died here. Wow. So, but along the line, you cannot do this for 100 years and not learn something. Yeah. So they were beginning to learn the patterns of the ocean. Yeah. And how to
navigate easily.
In fact, I'll tell you a story. One of the things they learned was that if they go out far enough and then let the wind blow, because they sail. This was the ship they used. They called them the caravels, or at least one of the ships that they used. Yeah. They called them their ships, their sail ships. So wind had a lot to play. Yeah. So one of the things they discovered was that instead of hugging the coast of Africa to get to this thing, which was a very difficult thing for them, now that they knew all their way to this place, they now devised a means that, look, if we blow out far enough, by the time we turn back, the wind will carry us further and across this place and land us here. Wow. Do you know what happened on one of such voyages? No. They discovered Brazil, because the map, Brazil is somewhere here.
Yeah, what was it?
That's how they discovered Brazil. And that's how Brazil is a Portuguese colony till today.
So that means anywhere they get to, they colonize the place.
They colonize because they're the first ones that go there. In fact, the story, I'm sure you've heard about the scramble for Africa in 1885, when the Europeans, sitting in Belgium, they divided Africa.
Yes.
The ones that took France.
That's where Africa was.
So people will tell that story, but not knowing that there was even something that happened earlier in 1894.
Which is?
When the two exploring nations then were Spain and Portugal. And between those two countries, they divided the whole of the world between the two of them.
Where is Britain? Britain, Germany?
They came later.
Wow.
They came later, and they came to fight and collect off the Spanish. The land that they went to, like the America, like Africa, all these different, some were controlled by the Spanish, some were. In Lagos, in the recent past, over 100 years ago in Lagos, the official language like we speak now was Portuguese. It wasn't English. It was the English, British people that
came and taught us English.
Exactly. So you have wow. So you have that. So like I said, and it was even while they were still trying to get to these spices that they discovered America. Wow. So a lot of history.
Well, sorry, sir. Like me personally, I have this question I've been asking myself. Based on my research and history, they said Africans were powerful in terms of physical strength, in terms of power. Like that's the phrase that Africa has been wireless, even for American. Like we control, like we have this spirituality. How were they able to conquer Africa and dictate what happens in Africa?
It's technology. Why is look at the wars of today? Who wins wars? You use technology.
But based on what I heard,
it's not about strength. It's not just about physical strength. how much can physical strength do when you don't have any collective coordination? Do you know how Lord Lugard conquered the whole of northern Nigeria? He only had 25, 30 white officers. The rest were Africans that he used. And then there was one equipment he had that guaranteed him success. A gun, machine gun then, they called it the Maxim gun. The king, Sultan of Sokoto, he had thousands of warriors. 5-10 times more than his own warriors. But that gun
crippled everything.
Crippled everything. It's a psychological effect. By the time they're coming and they're shooting and they're all... So it's not just about strength. It's about...
Where is Africa?
They use technology and they use their capacity to be very coordinated.
You know, we have this African spirituality. Like, what role did African spirituality played during this whole thing? Or does that mean that the African spirituality is not real? Like, it's not real. Like, it's not that powerful? Because I believe African spirituality is our craft. Like now they call it our witchcraft, but it's our craft. Like, what role did African spirituality played during that era, or does it mean that it was not applied at all?
Let me give you an instance. I wouldn't be able to answer that directly.
Okay.
But like everything else, you give instances. Now, when they were going to capture Benin, the first man that went to Benin was one James Phillips.
Yeah.
But he was killed. He was going to Benin to meet the king, but the king told him not to come. He persisted because thinking colonial mind that no one can tell him, I want to see him. But they were having some ritual festivals, and the king didn't want him to come. He made the approach, and somewhere close to the somewhere close to the kingdom, they ambushed him and they killed him there. So what happened? The British now went to regroup. Now, so imagine this is now. I'm not trying to play I'm not playing this African spirituality. So imagine from that day, they killed him and a small party. Maybe there are about just 20 or 30 of them. That would have been victory, Abi.
Yeah.
Because he had a few soldiers too and himself and all of that. At that point, imagine, put yourself in his position, the king. They'll be like, wow, we have conquered these British. We have killed a few of them. We have done this. These are our ancestors that are behind us. Those are the kind of things they will tell themselves. At the back of the mind, they will also be like, these people are going to come and revenge you. Let's start to prepare ourselves. So they'll be preparing militarily. They'll also be preparing spiritually. Sacrifices. Human sacrifices here and there. Power, this and that. But what were the British doing? The British were gathering all their forces in different parts of the world. They went to, in South Africa, in Malta, in the UK. They were gathering different, I think over 6 ships. Total number of people that came, they had about over 600 or thereabouts Africans. They had that Maxim gun too, like 6 of those Maxim guns, and I don't know, maybe 50 or more European, but organization, do you understand?
Undeniably, there's a whole lot to learn here at Onikan House. Thank you so much.
So, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed.
I enjoyed everything. I believe anyone who will come here will have a lot of experience. Thank you so much, sir. Our history as Africa is rich, and having a man like this who is single-handedly telling the story of Lagos is so impressive. Please, anytime you find a way in Lagos, or if you're in Lagos, visit Onikan House, where you get answers to your questions. You get answers to your question, and you get to feel yourself. Personally, I made a lot of clips here, but I can't put everything here on YouTube because it will be just too lengthy. Please know that this video was not sponsored by Onikan House, but I will encourage you to visit this place because there's a lot to learn here in Onikan House. And thank you, Onikan House, for making my birthday a very memorable one. It was short on my birthday, actually. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so I will tell more inspiring stories like this in the future.